If Darth Vader had overthrown Darth Sidious, the galaxy would have been plunged into a different kind of darkness, one shaped not by the cunning manipulations of a master puppeteer, but by the iron will and tormented soul of a fallen Jedi consumed by both ambition and conflict. Sidious, with his intricate web of schemes and his mastery of the Sith philosophy, was an architect of chaos masked by order. In contrast, Vader was a warrior, one who wielded fear and power but lacked the same refined subtlety. The galaxy under his rule would have been starkly different, and this shift in power would have caused a ripple effect through the lives of countless beings across the stars. To seize power from Darth Sidious would have required more than raw strength, for Sidious was no ordinary Sith. He embodied cunning and manipulation, and his ability to foresee and counter threats was unparalleled. For Vader to succeed, he would need not only to overpower his master but also to outthink him, a feat that would test even the most formidable of Sith Lords. Assuming he managed to strike down Sidious, perhaps exploiting a moment of overconfidence or capitalizing on his master's belief in his absolute superiority, the act itself would be a declaration of a new Sith order, one that discarded the rule of two in favor of Vader's vision. This vision, however, would not be one of true order or peace, despite Vader's lingering attachments to the ideals he once held as Anakin Skywalker. His rule would likely be defined by an even more overt militarization of the galaxy, where dissent was crushed with brutal efficiency and the Empire became a reflection of Vader's own internal torment. Unlike Sidious, whose mastery of deception allowed him to maintain a facade of legitimacy through the Senate and the illusion of unity, Vader would have little patience for such subtle games. Coruscant, the gleaming capital of the Empire, would become a true fortress world, its splendor overshadowed by the shadow of Vader's tyranny. Vader's leadership would likely have been an extension of his personality. Pragmatic yet emotional, decisive yet deeply conflicted. His obsession with eradicating weakness would manifest in the ruthless suppression of rebel factions, an intensified pursuit of the Jedi remnants, and perhaps even a campaign against those within the Imperial hierarchy who were loyal to Sidious. Without Sidious to temper or guide his ambitions, Vader might turn the Empire's resources toward objectives that served his own sense of destiny rather than the carefully calculated schemes of his master. The Death Star, once intended as a tool of intimidation and control, could become a symbol of his absolute power, a weapon not just to subjugate but to obliterate those who defied him. Amidst this chaos, Vader's connection to the Force would deepen, but in a way that reflected his torment. Freed from Sidious's manipulations, he might explore the ancient Sith teachings or pursue his own path, one that blended the dark side's destructive power with the remnants of his lost humanity. This pursuit could lead to an empire that was as much a reflection of his inner turmoil as it was a physical dominion. The Jedi, for him, would remain a symbol of betrayal and failure, and his campaign against them would take on a deeply personal tone. Yet, this vendetta could also blind him to the broader threats facing his empire, leaving it vulnerable to both internal dissent and external forces. The rebellion would face a paradoxical situation under Vader's rule. On one hand, his unyielding nature and tactical brilliance would make the fight against the Empire even more desperate. On the other hand, his lack of Sidious's political acumen and long-term vision might open cracks in the Empire's foundation, creating opportunities for the rebels to exploit. Vader's inability to inspire loyalty beyond fear could lead to a fracturing of Imperial unity, as ambitious officers and governors sought to carve out their own spheres of influence in the absence of Sidious's overarching control. In this new reality, Vader's relationships would take on renewed significance. If he retained knowledge of his connection to Luke Skywalker, it could alter the trajectory of his reign. The realization that his son lived might rekindle the flicker of Anakin Skywalker within him, creating an internal battle between his desire for power and his yearning for redemption. Alternatively, Vader could seek to mold Luke into an heir, viewing him as the key to securing the legacy of his empire. Such a dynamic would shift the galaxy's fate in unpredictable ways, as Luke's own choices and struggles with the Force would determine whether he followed his father into darkness or became a beacon of hope. Leia Organa, too, would play a pivotal role in this altered galaxy. Whether she remained a leader within the rebellion or was captured and turned into a pawn in Vader's schemes, her destiny would intersect with Vader's in profound and transformative ways. The revelation of her parentage could shatter her perception of herself and fuel her determination to oppose her father, or it could open a path toward reconciliation that reshaped the conflict altogether. The Sith philosophy, as embodied by Vader, would also undergo a transformation. Sidious's death would mark the end of the traditional Sith doctrine of betrayal and succession. Vader's rule could herald a new era for the dark side, one that rejected the constraints of the rule of two and embraced a broader, more inclusive vision of Sith power. However, this would not be without its challenges, as the nature of the dark side inherently breeds competition and betrayal. The seeds of dissent within Vader's own ranks could grow into a force that ultimately overthrew him, continuing the cycle of Sith destruction. At the heart of this galactic upheaval would be the people of the galaxy, whose lives would be shaped by Vader's reign in ways both profound and tragic. While Sidious maintained a veneer of stability, Vader's empire would be one of overt oppression, where the fear of his wrath pervaded every aspect of life. Yet, this very fear could sow the seeds of rebellion, as those who lived under the shadow of his rule sought to reclaim their freedom. The galaxy under Vader would be a crucible, forging heroes and villains alike in the fires of resistance and domination. Vader's downfall, if it came, would likely arise not from external forces but from the very traits that defined him: his ambition, his anger, and his inability to reconcile the conflicting aspects of his identity. His inability to fully let go of Anakin Skywalker, combined with the weight of his actions as Darth Vader, would create a vulnerability that could be exploited by those who sought to end his rule. Whether this was Luke, Leia, or another figure altogether, the ultimate fate of the galaxy would rest on their ability to confront Vader and overcome the darkness he represented. Vader's reign, if continued, would also expose the paradoxes inherent in his rule. On the surface, he embodied absolute strength, a monolithic enforcer of imperial will. Yet, beneath the armor, he was a deeply fractured being. This duality could not be ignored, especially in the face of the galaxy's complexity. For all his power, Vader lacked the political finesse to manage an empire spanning countless worlds. Sidious, despite his monstrous cruelty, had mastered the art of turning chaos into order, employing layers of bureaucracy, manipulation, and fear to maintain control. Vader, by contrast, would rely more heavily on brute force, creating an empire where fear was pervasive but unity was fragile. One significant aspect of Vader's rule would be the role of the Force in his governance. Sidious had always treated the Sith's mastery of the Force as a means to manipulate reality and shape events on a galactic scale. Vader's approach, however, would be more personal and direct. He would use the Force as an instrument of his will, intervening in matters great and small. Planets that resisted his rule might experience the raw fury of his power firsthand, as Vader led military campaigns to crush dissent, personally walking onto battlefields with his crimson blade ignited. This hands-on approach, while terrifyingly effective in the short term, would eventually stretch even Vader's formidable endurance. An empire cannot thrive on fear alone, and as the cracks began to show, insurrection would become inevitable. The dynamics of Vader's inner circle would also change dramatically. With Sidious gone, the Imperial hierarchy would devolve into a contest of survival and ambition. Figures like Grand Moff Tarkin, who respected power and order, might initially align with Vader but would soon recognize the inefficiency of his methods. Vader's tendency to act on impulse and emotion would alienate the technocrats and strategists who had been essential to the Empire's success. Moreover, ambitious officers like Admiral Pyatt or Director Krennic could see the chaos as an opportunity to carve out their own territories, leading to a fracturing of Imperial authority. Unlike Sidious, who had skillfully pitted his subordinates against one another to maintain control, Vader would likely struggle to contain the ambitions of those beneath him, leading to an empire at war with itself. On a broader scale, the galaxy's political landscape would shift dramatically. The rebellion, galvanized by the death of Sidious, would find a renewed sense of purpose in opposing Vader. While Vader's ruthlessness might initially suppress resistance, his inability to inspire true loyalty would ultimately prove to be a weakness. Sidious had been a master of playing the long game, using propaganda and manipulation to maintain the Empire's legitimacy in the eyes of the galaxy's populace. Vader, however, would discard such pretense, ruling through fear and violence alone. This overt tyranny would only strengthen the rebellion's resolve, drawing more systems to their cause. Vader's personal journey would remain central to the galaxy's fate. The revelation of his lineage, his children Luke and Leia, would serve as a potential turning point. If he sought to make Luke his apprentice, the dynamic between father and son could either cement Vader's rule or bring about his downfall. Luke, torn between the pull of the dark side and his hope for redemption, would face an agonizing choice. Would he join Vader and help him reshape the galaxy, or would he rise against him, risking everything to restore balance to the Force? Their conflict would echo across the stars, influencing not just the fate of the rebellion but the very nature of the Force itself. Leia, too, would find herself at the center of this struggle. If she discovered her true heritage, her role as a leader of the rebellion would take on an even greater significance. She would become not just a symbol of resistance but a beacon of hope, a living contradiction to Vader's tyranny. Her strength and determination could inspire others to rise against the Empire, even as she grappled with the knowledge that her father was the man she had sworn to destroy. This personal dimension of the galactic conflict would add layers of complexity to the rebellion's cause, blurring the lines between heroism and vengeance. The Jedi, or what remained of them, would face an uncertain future under Vader's rule. With Sidious gone, the Sith doctrine would evolve, and Vader might choose to establish his own version of a dark side order. He could seek to corrupt Force-sensitive individuals to his cause, creating a cadre of enforcers who served as both apprentices and tools of his will. This new Sith order would pose a unique threat to the galaxy, as it would represent the institutionalization of the dark side on a scale never before seen. Yet, such an order would also sow the seeds of Vader's downfall, as the nature of the Sith ensures that betrayal and ambition are inevitable. Ultimately, Vader's greatest challenge would be himself. As a ruler, he would be defined by his inability to reconcile the remnants of Anakin Skywalker with the identity of Darth Vader. His desire for control, his fear of loss, and his lingering attachments would create a constant internal conflict that would manifest in his leadership. His obsession with power would blind him to the needs of the galaxy, leading to decisions that prioritized his own dominance over the welfare of his empire. Over time, this would erode the very foundation of his rule, leaving him isolated and vulnerable. The end of Vader's reign, when it came, would likely be as dramatic as its beginning. Whether it was the rebellion, a traitor within the Empire, or even his own son who brought about his downfall, the galaxy would not tolerate his tyranny forever. Vader's death would mark the end of an era, but it would also leave a void that could not easily be filled. The scars of his rule would linger, shaping the galaxy's future in ways that no one could predict. In the end, a galaxy ruled by Darth Vader would be one of endless conflict, a place where the struggle between light and dark played out not just in the stars, but within the heart of the man who sought to dominate them. It would be a galaxy defined by his contradictions, his power, and ultimately, his failure to escape the shadow of his own humanity.